guys, fantastic. So to get us started off, what is AP? What is your understanding of AP? Any ideas?
Alternative provision, I think it stands for.
Ooh, alternative provision? Yes, yes, indeed. What is alternative provision? Ah, yeah, Tiffany, for some reason, the learner does not attend school. Okay, so that's something they don't do. What do they do? Okay, not mainstream so much. So if they're not attending school, what are they doing? Ah, homeschooling to a point.
Yes, they are homeschooling and taking lessons from home simply because they have special reasons of not attending school.
Okay, so perhaps an AP learner could have been expelled, but it can be for a variety of reasons. So for one or another reason, this learner is no longer attending a mainstream traditional school environment, and that's why they come to us to help support them in a different way to tailor to their specific needs. So it is defined as education outside school arranged by local authorities or schools themselves. It is full-time education, and these learners have often had negative experiences with traditional education systems. As a result, a lot of these learners face social, emotional, and learning challenges, and it's very important that we take a different approach to what they're accustomed to. So for today's workshop, we will be focusing on learning how to build rapport and connection with AP learners, which is absolutely crucial to teach these learners. They need to respect you and they need to have developed a relationship with you. Explore how to adapt teaching to meet varied emotional and learning needs. And also we will discuss ways to cultivate trust and encourage learner engagement, because ultimately these learners are a bit disengaged and we want to bring them back into learning. You will be required to complete a follow-up workshop task that includes case studies and practical applications, and this will be due on the 8th of November. But we will be handing over to our two speakers today. They are fellow facilitators and experts in their fields. We have Shen, Long, and Daisy. Thank you so much for joining us today. And take it away, Daisy.
Okay, hello guys. So, yeah, we are talking about connections, so building genuine connections with students and building rapport. So, some bullet points of how to build genuine connections. So, first of all, make sure that every interaction counts. So, when I'm in the first session with a student, we obviously do the icebreaker type things. And I try and get them to talk about themselves as much as possible. I try and find out as much as possible about them. Maybe they have pets, siblings, when's their birthday, things like that. And as much as possible, try and show interest in their personal stories and their interests. And then we have an example here. So, how's your dog Luna doing? We also have building trust by connecting beyond academics. So obviously the whole point that you guys are meeting the student is to teach them. We are facilitating their education, but they might not have been speaking to people. Sorry, that doesn't make sense. We might be like the first person that they speak to that day. So when they are telling you something, if they are sharing something with you, that is quite a big thing, I think, for AP students. So something that I will often say in the classroom agreement rules is that I want an open dialogue. So I want the student to let me know how they're feeling about the topic, and it doesn't have to be positive. So if they're finding it boring, if it's too easy, too hard, or if it is positive and they are enjoying it, I like to know how they're feeling about something so that if they do dislike something, I know for next time. And this way, they can see that things are not like school. That is one of the big things I try and get across in the sessions, that this is not like school, it is different. And we're also going to look at some techniques to help build connections. So first and foremost, I wanted to show my notebook for this year. I don't know if you guys can see that. I have a bunch of different tabs, and these are for different year groups that I have. So if I have that class, I will flick over to it, and then I have notes for every single student so that when they join, I can be like, oh, how was cheer practice? I know you said last weekend you had that game. How did that go? And you can just build on things, and that way they know that it is a genuine connection. It's not like, oh, I'm going to tell you one thing, and then next week you forget it. You never bring it up again. And then if we could have the next slide, please. Cool. Okay, so what we're going to do next then is we have some scenarios, and then for every scenario we have 2 options, and we are going to have a poll, I believe. Yeah, Jodie Ann said write down their birthdays and you can sing happy birthday. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we will have a poll, right, Samantha?
Yes, I'll set that up now.
All right, awesome. So a preface to this activity then. So there isn't really like a clear right or wrong answer to this. There are reasons why you might do one over than the other. So what we're looking for here is literally just maximizing connections with the student. So there is an option that might be more beneficial. So our first scenario, we've been given a task. You've been given a task for a learner to write a biography from George Washington's perspective. Midway through, the learner says, "Do you want to hear about my weekend?" What do you do? So we have A, spend a few minutes hearing about their weekend, or ask them to hold off until the end. Yes, John. Yeah, this is for AP learners still.
All right, we'll close the vote in give it maybe 10 seconds.
All right, 10 seconds more. The votes are coming in.
Okay, Sam, I think we're good to go.
All right, cool. So I would say by a landslide, most people picked A. And to explain these options a little bit more, could we have the next slide, please? Perfect. So some reasons why you might pick option A then. So you are listening to them, so you're showing that you're also invested in their life, and it's going to help you build rapport. So since AP learners often have trust issues, this small gesture can foster a positive and safe space. So even if it's only a few minutes, they might just want to tell you one thing. And then the people who voted B, like I said, it's not a wrong answer. However, picking B, if you ask them to wait, and while it could refocus them on the work, it does inadvertently shut down that connection. Shut down the opportunity for connection. Okay, and I think next one. So scenario 2, a learner mentions that they love drawing and would like to illustrate their biography assignment. So we could A, encourage them to add the illustrations as part of the project, as part of the task, or we can ask them to focus just on the writing and then consider the illustrations as an extra afterwards. So is the voting reset for this one?
Yes.
Yep, it's currently active.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. I don't see it on my screen. Ah, there we go. Okay, so I think that was pretty much everyone for A. So encouraging them to add it as part of it. So choosing A, it shows them that you value their creativity and you are willing to adapt, which we will talk about later on. Shen's going to talk about that later. And it also allows them to take ownership of their learning and benefits certain learning styles more than other methods. And then B, asking them to focus on the writing first. So while it does keep the focus on writing, which might be your main objective of the session, it might make them feel that their interests aren't relevant, and it might mean that in the future they'll be less likely to share again. but I think everybody pretty much chose A for that, which is awesome. Okay, scenario 3 then. So we have a learner is reluctant to complete a task, and instead of asking, why do I have to do this, this can be a sign of feeling overwhelmed or disconnected from the task. So what do you do? So we have option A, take a moment and ask why. Take a moment to ask what they don't like about it and adjust it. Or will you encourage them to give it a try because you're the facilitator and you have given an instruction? Oh, I see it now. It's down at the bottom. There's the little poll tab. Okay, cool. So, landslide again. We have picked A. Can we see the explanations for it? Perfect. So, by picking A, you are engaging them in a brief discussion, you are validating their feelings, and you may uncover useful information about their learning preferences. So maybe there is something that has gone on and it means they don't understand, but it might be difficult for them to come out and say what the issue is. So they might need help. And then picking B, while it does encourage persistence, it might overlook some underlying challenge that they're facing. Okay, so next we're talking about setting realistic engagement goals. So building trust doesn't happen overnight, but consistency and openness will make a difference over time. So taking the time out to hear them out on things and learn about them. And you might have a list of things that you want to get done, but social interactions can be just as tough as, for instance, remembering the quadratic formula if you're a GCSE student. And navigating social interactions, although it might seem simple, everyday interactions can actually be quite complex. So some students who struggle socially, especially in online settings where the cues and comforts are reduced, so they might need support with that, some guidance, and sometimes taking a fresh approach might make the process smoother and a little bit less intimidating. Thank you, Sam, as well. Yeah. So the learners might not have that many social interactions, which will also have an effect. Okay. So next slide then. I have my more on the... So adding to the realistic engagement goals, if you want to think about it like learning objectives, we can think of it like this. So you can obviously still have your structured learning objectives that you would have for any other class, but I think keeping the scope small and being flexible is really beneficial in these lessons. So if you're unsure about taking time out of the session just to talk and build connections, you can think of it like having their own learning objectives too. Additional aspects of social interactions in the sessions. So some examples we have, they can follow a conversation and stay on topic when adding points. Or if it's a group setting, contributing relevantly to the group discussion about topics, or respecting turn taking as well in more group settings. And yeah, like I said, you might be the first person that they speak to that day, and they may not be sharing things with others around them about like their weekend, pets, pastimes. So if they want to share with you, that is quite a big thing. And then next slide.
Before we head on, perhaps could anyone share any experiences they've had with setting realistic engagement goals and how that might have improved confidence for your learners who might have been struggling? Does anyone have any experiences?
I have one. Hi, Sam. It's Joy.
Hi, Joy.
Yes. So I had a student who recently interjects with just their own interests during a lesson. But recently, in most of my recent lessons, they've actually started asking me questions about the content and not just talking about their interests. So they try to relate what they find interesting about the content to something that they might know or remember from somewhere. So that for me was a good goal that we reached.
Thank you, Joy. Fantastic. And if anyone else has really any... Good. We'll be exploring methods still.
I suppose a realistic goal on that you could look at is a lot of AP learners are very shy. They don't want to obviously use their microphone or their cameras. Maybe a realistic goal is they unmute themselves to say something. Or an even better goal, maybe not as realistic, but is they turn on their camera. Like, that is a huge goal.
That would be huge.
Another goal is, sometimes these kids, I know we like students to be on time, and they're not always, but with AP learners, you do not need to, please do not focus on that. Maybe they come for 5 minutes of your lesson. The next time they're there for maybe 10 minutes, and your realistic goal can be like, okay, maybe over the next few classes, I want them to be there for 20 minutes, out of that. So, think of the small goals, but realistically, if they can attend 20 minutes, that's amazing, considering they were with you for 5 minutes to begin with. So, big deal.
Absolutely. Thanks, Candace.
Definitely. Okay, so how this translates to the classroom then. So these are things that I will always use. So first of all, you have your quick check-ins when you see them. So, hi, how are you doing today? And then Monday reflections, you ask them about their weekend. How was your weekend? Did you do anything fun? And then when it is towards the end of the week, ask them about their Friday plans, got any plans for the weekend? And in relation to writing things down in the notebook, so asking them things, follow-up questions. So, oh, last time I saw you, you mentioned you had a soccer game. How did that go? Did you guys win? Things like that. And then you can also have your time of the year questions. So, are you dressing up for Halloween? Loads of kids have been loving telling me about their Halloween costumes today. And soon I'm going to be asking, what do you want for Christmas? And then anything else like that. How's Ramadan? Got any New Year's resolutions? Things like that. And again, if they mention any pets, note it down. And then if you're stuck for ideas to maybe they've joined early in the session and you're thinking of things to talk about, you can ask about their dog, about their pets. And if a student shares an interest with you, remember it. So write it down and bring it up from time to time. So if they say that they're into art, you can ask them, have you been working on any new art projects? Have you watched any new films? And also recognizing their efforts and emotions is a big one. So maybe you seem really happy today. Did anything exciting happen? Or on the flip side, I noticed you seemed a bit quiet today. Is there anything that you want to share or talk about? Even if they answer no, that is completely fine. So those are some examples of how I try to stay consistent and what I personally use with students to build more connections. However, it doesn't happen overnight. So it will happen gradually, week after week. But if you are really struggling to build rapport, there are things that you can say and maybe the student can tag on. So maybe, oh, I have this song stuck in my head. Have you heard of it? And it's like Hot to Go or something. Or like, oh, I watched this really great video the other day on YouTube about a NASA space mission. Have you watched anything good? So anything to get them interacting away from academics, I find usually works.
Yeah, and just to build on that, Daisy, so I think sometimes we feel a great deal of pressure in terms of the academics, and of course the academics are important, but we can balance this. So you don't want to spend an entire session rapport building, guys, that's a bit much. But showing that interest and having these discussions with learners, you will be able to make use of the time more effectively if they have that rapport, that respect, and that relationship with you. And in terms of encouraging the cameras and mics, you can encourage it, but please under no circumstances force it. It is absolutely optional. We want the learners to be comfortable above everything else. Okay, awesome. Daisy, was there anything else you wanted to touch on there?
No, I think that is everything from me, guys. So next I am going to be handing over to Shen.
All right, thank you, Daisy, and hello, everybody. Can everyone hear me okay, first of all?
Yes, clear audio there.
Okay, perfect. So if we go to the next slide. Yeah, today I'm going to be chatting about flexibility in lesson planning. And I think it's important to note that Each learner comes to us with their own experiences, challenges, and strengths. Some may need extra emotional support, whilst others might learn best with hands-on activities or clear visual aids. And that's where flexibility is essential. So by staying adaptable, we can adjust our approach in real time to better meet the students' needs. So to take it you guys, can we get a little bit of a discussion? What does it mean to be adaptable in a classroom setting? Would anyone like to jump in via mic or chat box there?
So, I mean, adapt, like not sticking specifically to the lesson plan. Got to do something different.
Yeah, exactly. So whether it's lesson plan or something happens in the lesson, the student may be, a little bit tired that day, or you can notice their body language, they're not really engaged. What does it mean to be adaptable?
So I've had times when my lesson plan, like say for example, we're doing maths, and the examples that I like the student to try out are a little bit too challenging. So I've had to, adapt the examples to make them a little bit easier, or vice versa, making them a bit more challenging in order to engage the student a bit more.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jodie. Yes. So amazing answer. I can see there some others. So how do you reduce lesson content? Yes, I do that all the time. Recognize when a change is needed. Do the lesson based on student emotions and feelings as well. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, guys, some lovely answers there.
This
yeah.
just comes back to the word that you probably often hear me say is you need to be able to pivot in your lessons. Right? So if I say that, that's what I mean. You need to be able to change, adapt.
Yeah, pivot. Thank you, Candice. Another thing that I think helps me enormously is having the right mindset going into every class, especially with AP students. And it helps not only me, but of course the learners stay positive and flexible when facing challenges. Because I think it's a famous quote, even the best made plans can go awry. And I have there another one, things never happen the same way twice. And I think once you accept that, it makes any challenges that sort of come our way a little bit easier to deal with. Okay, a little funny visual that I created that represents another sort of approach I take, but yes, Bilbo Baggins there going on his adventures. So you can see there he's clutching a piece of paper, and I treat that as my lesson plan, the course brief, the sort of guidelines we're given. And then I have the bigger picture, which is all of the things that can happen in the lesson, the students feeling. Maybe they say, I'm not going to do that activity today. It means treating each class as an adventure and embracing the unexpected. So perhaps I had a packed lesson with lots of content, but today the student might benefit more from emotional support and an extra Kahoot or something like that. Now, a little fun question for us. Does anyone have a positive quote or a mantra that they use to navigate challenging situations they'd be happy to share with us? This too shall pass. I love that. Yes. Thank you, Christine. Anybody else?
I have one. So any answer is a good answer. So especially if the student has like completely shut down about what you're doing. If I get a response, I'm happy. We're moving.
Yeah, absolutely. So small wins are a huge win in many cases. Thank you, Daisy. Okay, some more coming in the chat there. Got to keep swimming. Tough times don't last. Yes. All behavior is communication. I think that's a great one as well. Everything will be fine. Yes. Always in the end. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. That's so lovely reading all of those as well. Okay. Another thing to consider is that mindset isn't just a quote or a few positive words. It's something we can actively practice and develop. So even on days when we don't feel positive or resilient, our actions can still reflect those qualities, and that sets a constant tone for the students. So I have some tips on how to practice that on the next slide. So staying flexible and open-minded, practicing patience and empathy, giving the students that few extra seconds to answer and really think about the questions. Focus on building trust and rapport, which Daisy, lovely presentation there, talked us through some amazing tips on how to do that. Promote growth, mindset, and resilience. So sometimes I will intentionally make a mistake on my PowerPoint with students that I know don't do too well with sort of performing, a little bit, making a mistake basically. And then I'll ask if they can correct that for me. Celebrating small wins and efforts and staying calm and consistent so the student always knows what to expect from you when they come into the lesson. Okay, so a little bit of a situation for us. Just during a class discussion, one student, Alex, is consistently quiet and reluctant to share their thoughts. They appear disengaged, often looking down at their desk and avoiding eye contact. Other students are actively participating, and it seems like Alex is falling behind. What do we think about the situation and the learner there, Alex? How would we perceive that, do we think? Alex is shy, might not be having a good day, needs more encouragement. Maybe they are bored, fantastic. Struggling with content. Perhaps
Maybe we
lacking
could ask him,
confidence.
a question that we know he 100% would get correct, like a very easy question.
Yeah, fantastic. So maybe asking some questions, definitely. Seeing if we can maybe find out. Does not want to give his answers even for whatever reason. Brilliant. So you guys have actually covered a lot of what I was going to say on how to maybe reframe that approach. So instead of viewing Alex's silence as a lack of interest or understanding, we can reframe that positively and productively using all of the things that are in the chat as well. It might be that we could use the breakout rooms as well, and students could be in smaller groups. Alex might feel more comfortable to talk to one or two other students. It might be that we could say, hey, I want everybody to contribute one thing. And Alex then knows exactly what's expected of him. And also, I think we should appreciate sometimes eye contact and nodding the head or shaking the head is engagement as well. So, again, appreciating the small wins. Okay, another stressful or disheartening situation example. During a lesson, a young AP learner, Sam, frequently gets up from their seat, wanders around the classroom, or strays off topic when participating in discussions. This behavior disrupts the flow of the lesson and distracts both Sam and their classmates. Okay, how could we maybe reframe this? What do we think of this situation?
Is the learner being naughty? Is this misbehavior? Or is something else going on?
So yeah, possibly it could be SEM, brilliant.
Although I'd be careful about making diagnoses. A lot of learners do have attention problems. Attention spans are limited, but possibly.
Yeah, fantastic. Easily distracted. Engage Sam with writing. Yes. So maybe changing how Sam gives answers will be a big improvement. Brain breaks. Yeah, more interactive. Needs to feel more grounded. Fantastic. Okay. So instead of interpreting Sam's actions as disruptive or inattentive, the facilitator can reframe the situation by maybe thinking, could we have some more brain breaks in here? Maybe even saying, it's just one more minute, guys, of this exam practice, and then we have a Kahoot. And even just knowing that there's something more interactive might allow that learner to think, okay, I've only got one more minute, I can do that. Brilliant. Okay. So this
Sorry,
is what
Shan, can I just add? So some of the responses coming in are really, really good. Just remember, this is an AP learner. So getting them to read out loud or getting them to be the center of attention might backfire. Okay, because they, one, possibly don't want to be here, so that's kind of putting more pressure on them. And two, maybe they're anxious, they're nervous, and that is just going to throw them off even more. So the best thing is, like what Shen said, is probably give them something to look forward to or adapt your approach. I know with some learners, you can kind of like, if they really like doing something, you'd be like, okay, let's get through this. And maybe it's not a Kahoot, but maybe they get to draw. Or I know one learner really liked music, so got to listen to music, So try to find their interests and play off that.
Love that, Candace. Yeah, absolutely. And maybe perhaps we could think about, how would you draw Sam back into the lesson without making the learner feel like you're putting them on the spot and that they are being forced or pressured to interact, because that is going to backfire. So how could we draw the learner back in? Any ideas? Throwing the CCQs their direction is probably not going to work well, make them anxious. Group activity, yeah. A fun activity, yeah, maybe pivot from the activity that you're on because it's too difficult or it's the wrong type of activity. Peer learning can work well. Good ideas. Also, guys, different types of interaction, because if you use continuous CCQs, our learners become quite tired, especially if they are using the chat box. Keep in mind that a lot of them aren't used to extensive typing. So give them other ways to interact. Quiz games, highlighting, drawing, typing, those aspects. Well, depends on whether they're using the chat box or not. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Candice, as well. So things that I have found work really well are collaborating closely with the learner to plan future lessons. So you might have lessons for set topics, but it's always a good idea to adapt them specifically for your students. So ask them in the first session if they need breaks or if they would enjoy having a Kahoot activity, for example, in each lesson. And that's an example from my first session. What helps you learn, what works for you, and then we go through those different methods and we chat about what they do like, but also what they don't like. And if they say they explicitly hate something, I never include it unless it's exam practice, because that's a little bit unavoidable in some cases.
Just a question on that. We have on occasion had learners who do not like quiz games or videos, which can be tricky. So if your learner tells you that they don't enjoy those aspects, how can you make the lesson fun and interactive? The word searches and crossword puzzles, they tend to not like so much, a lot of the schools. But potentially word games, depending on the subject. Talking about interests.
Something that I do that's almost always effective with like any type of learner is hangman and using the whiteboard. And this also is like ties in with my subject English. So that's something that's the word game, and they really enjoy it when I get the answers wrong, and sometimes I get the answers wrong on purpose. So yeah, that's something that I like to do.
Thank you, Fatima. Yeah, guys, the tool use, a few people have said in the chat box as well. Really explore and experiment with the lesson space platform. I think not everyone is aware of what is available on there. You have the whiteboard, which you can change backgrounds. You can include a grid background for mathematics equations. There is a document feature if you want to create a collaborative document with your classes. There's a formula button. There are so many different lesson space tools that I think a lot of us don't utilize. So enter your classroom ahead of the start time, experiment with the tools, see what you can do that is creative within your slides.
Okay. Thanks, Sam. Yeah, great point about the lesson space tools. One thing I have started doing every lesson with the ELA learners, grade 1, is moving things around the board. They seem to love that because sometimes quiz are a little bit hard with them being so young, but yeah, moving pictures and things. So another thing is to assess the students' daily mood. Traditional lesson plans may not work every day, even if they usually do. And it's a good idea to gauge learner mood and tone at the start of each class. You can even ask them if they're comfortable, if you know them well, sort of how they're feeling, and whether they would like to slow things down that day. Adjust activities based on how learners are feeling as well. So, if we have a lot of exam practice, for example, but they're saying they feel quite sick, we could then pivot using Candice's keyword there and maybe involve a few more interactive activities.
Just a question over here.
Yeah, hi Elliot.
Yeah, so in a case where perhaps you might have set out, objectives for the entire duration of however lessons you might have had, let's say you had maybe 8 to 10, and you had ideas obviously getting through all the objectives, and now you're maybe pivoting once or twice. Isn't there a penalty on our side to say that we maybe didn't get through the things that we had set out to do at first? In the case with the AP students where they might not be as interactive, and of course now you have to pivot time and again.
Shen, do you want to answer that, or Sam?
So I was just going to say, I think if we've got objectives from the schools, such as cover this, you can do that in a way, but just maybe slow it down a little bit. And if you've got lesson plans and structures, you can stick to that, but maybe just sort of do it in a different way. For example, it'll be on topic, but you might do a Kahoot. It will be on topic, but you might do a bamboozle or a word wall.
And adding on that, so I think I want to refrain. That's not the right word. I want to change everybody's mindset a little bit with AP. AP lessons, you are not necessarily following content. Yes, in the course brief, I will give you potential subjects, potential aspects, but the big aim with AP is to build the learner's confidence, to possibly get them back into some sort of academic routine because they've been out of it, and kind of try to get them interested in the subject. Yeah, 100%. Estelle's correct. You're working on improving their understanding. So with AP, you are not expected to cover all the content. You are not expected to cover everything. You basically are there to try to encourage them, try to get them to want to even be here, to want to even kind of learn. So connecting it to real life is a big thing, what they're interested in. So it's okay to change it. It's okay to change your objectives as long as you're getting somewhere with the learner. So even if the content is, as Shen said, in a game format or somehow related, perfect. You're covering something.
Yeah.
I hope that helps.
That's fantastic, Candice. On that note, if you are required to pivot, let's say you need to adjust the difficulty to make it easier or more difficult, how do you do this with your lesson prep? If you've gone into a lesson with specific prep set to a specific level and you are required to pivot, how are you going to do that? It can be tricky. I went into a lesson once to teach figures of speech and the learner didn't know any of them. And it was a recap of all of the figures of speech. What do? They've never heard of them.
Hi, Sam. It's Joy again.
Thank you.
So with science, I think it's a bit easier because you can give a little bit more information on what the question is asking or describe where you want the student to think about or get the answer from. And then if they still struggle, I usually give them either the letters to unscramble that spell the answer, or I try to give them the opposites of the word that I am looking for.
That's lovely. So you kind of, within the lesson, using the slides, typing, writing, you add adjustments, you add things in. Also seen some fantastic points in the chat. Guys, it really comes down to prep. Make sure you've got a range of materials, especially for that content section of the lesson plan. Easier to more difficult so that you've got a variety to choose from. Thank you. Some fantastic ones in the chat box.
Okay, so being able to adapt, a part of that is recognizing where your students at. So some little activities on the board there that I do use, I might just ask, how is your day going? I might say, circle how you're feeling. The younger learners seem to love that one. But I think it's also to recognize that some learners don't like voicing their thoughts or emotions. And you could always agree on a code word that the learner can use when they need a break or when things get too much for them and they don't want to voice that. I have done that recently, and our code word is Spider-Man. So whenever the student feels overwhelmed or they need help, they say Spider-Man, and I know that's my time to step in and maybe scaffold a little bit with the learning.
How could we as facilitators incorporate this, or where do you think it might have been useful in previous courses? I know some of our facilitators do use this.
I know a lot of you do use the emotions one. The code word is great specifically for learners who are shy or anxious. It could even be an emotion. Maybe they put an emotion in the chat box, and okay, that's break time. Okay, I need to give them a break, or we need to do a movement exercise. Anything just to kind of make sure that you're checking in with them. What have you guys done? Other than like the emojis or the code word, have you figured out anything else?
I recently had a student who I could just see wasn't having a good day, and they didn't really want to talk at the start of the lesson. So I just told them how I was feeling on that day, and that I've also felt the same way that they felt and what I did to improve my day, and then suggested all of the activities that I had planned and which they would like to do first. And that really improved their emotions.
It can be great to be vulnerable, to teach students that it's okay to be vulnerable, and of course also to model different types of emotional intelligence. That's fantastic.
Okay, so this sort of links to what Daisy was talking about earlier, but in order to be adaptable and flexible, I think we need to try new things, and sometimes it is a case of trial and error. I wouldn't sort of put a load of new things into one lesson. I would tweak things as the weeks go on, maybe change one step of the 6-part lesson structure. And this is something I really recommend trying. I haven't had a negative experience with this one for Teach Me, so yeah, it stands in good stead. It's notes and crosses, and all I get them to do is tell me a key word we might have discussed or a little fact they've learned this lesson, and then they get to draw their X or O on the board. And then it goes back to me, and I might say, I learned that you're going as a Jedi for Halloween. And they laugh, and it's a chance for us to have fun and build rapport, and they really do enjoy that one.
Does anyone else have any good Teach Me ideas? Some learners really thrive in this step. Some are a little more anxious. Some learners love a completely blank slide, while others may need an image or a prompt. How does
Remember,
everyone?
this is AP focused.
Indeed. So a blank screen will probably cause great anxiety for an AP learner. Finding the mistake is great.
You could have a slide that's got a picture on it of something you did in the lesson and ask them to explain the picture.
Yeah, recall back to something they've already covered, something familiar. You can also sometimes go back to reference previous slides. If the learner starts to explain something but is struggling a little, that's definitely something you can do. Images, always great. Fill in the blanks. That's a nice one. Yes. Good scaffolding, some guidance there. Thanks, guys.
I just want to jump in on that note very quickly. With AP, the Teach Me, it's okay to adapt, all right? And I will mention this kind of at the end about the steps, but the Teach Me, some of the AP learners, they don't want to be told like, what did you learn? That's too much pressure. So these fun games are amazing. If you find that the learners are too young or they're really, really struggling, just ask them, okay, what is one thing you learned today? Or what is one thing that you liked today? What would you like to do more of? Yeah, so it's okay if they can't teach you. It's okay. But as long as that you maybe get some advice from them, some ideas, what stood out to you, brilliant, to help you with your next lesson, to hopefully get them more engaged again, brilliant. That's the aim.
Okay, so for this one, I think a question that I would ask myself, especially early on when I joined Purple Ruler, was what do I do if a student arrives and I'm meeting them for the first time and they're not where I think they're going to be. And something that really helps is having other things open in the background that I can use. So it might be a lower level bamboozle, for example, it might be a higher level word wall. And I just have them there in case the student needs to be re-energized or they're looking a little bit bored, or even if they're not sort of where I think they will be. It really does help with being able to pivot and to think on your feet.
And I would recommend having a variety of these games on hand, even for extension material if you happen to finish a lesson early, and have easy, medium, difficult. You could even have a slide with 3 word wall quizzes on it and ask your learner, which one do you want to try? You know, easy, medium, difficult. It can be a really great extension.
And last but not least, which is kind of on theme for today, if anyone celebrates Halloween, creating theme lessons. I personally love doing this, and you have to remember, I think, in alternative provision settings, learners might miss out on the excitement of the lead up to major holidays like Halloween, Christmas, Easter, other things they celebrate. I've put on lessons for Eid, for example, and I think putting in extra effort to create themed lessons can really make a student's day and can make it easier to build rapport. So just recently, I'm teaching a student language devices and they said they love K-pop. So I got some K-pop lyrics and ones that had devices in, and then yesterday they had to spot which device was in the lyric and they were so happy about that. It was really lovely to see. So I think putting in that little bit of effort for theme lessons is, yeah, it's huge.
Now, I know a few of our facilitators have had great success in doing this, even with mathematics subjects, just by including pictures, even if it's not directly related. Would anyone like to share some of the methods they've used to incorporate themes into lessons, whether it's related to holidays or other aspects?
Hi, I'd like to put in my
Thank you.
recommendation. Yeah, so I actually did a class recently on simultaneous equations, and I related it to Halloween, and all the equations had like pounds, obviously, for costumes. So alien, banshee, ghost, and whatnot. So they had to solve a simultaneous equation, and then they had to figure out which, like, where alien cost like maybe like 12 pounds, for instance. So they had to figure out what they cost. So I found it was quite nice, and Dracula was behind the whole theme. So he was trying to figure out what costume to buy and what to eat, what to get as well. So it was just like a fun sort of thing to do.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you.
Hi, I'd like to add, not necessarily a theme, but it was more related to the learner's interest. I had a learner in my English class who absolutely loved wrestling, and he had issues or challenges constructing sentences. So on that weekend, he was going to watch a wrestling match. So as part of our lesson, I asked him to write me 10 sentences describing what had happened or what stood out for him when he went to go watch that match. And he absolutely enjoyed doing that as compared to my usual lessons and slides and topics that I would like for him to cover.
Super, thank you, thank you.
Another one that I've seen work really well is superhero themes. So maybe getting them to go on a quest. You know, they start off somewhere, and as they progress through the questions or something like that, they move through the quest. And eventually, you know, or some sort of superhero thing where they need to save whoever. That also works quite well because there's a goal at the end of it. Like, oh, I need to save whoever, or we need to get to wherever you want to go. But that also works quite well to have like a goal that's not necessarily linked with the content.
Okay, super. So just to recap a bit on what we've been talking about, it's very important to understand with AP and with learners in general that flexibility is really important, and understanding where your learner is coming from is important. It is not a case of sticking to the lesson plan or pushing through a series of objectives, especially if the learner is not connecting with the material. So instead, let's consider, what are the learner's goals? If the learner is attending, they have achieved a goal. If the learner contributes 2 to 3 times in a lesson where previously they've never contributed, that is a win. They've achieved a goal. If they leave the course having learned 1 or 2 topics and understood those topics, we have succeeded in what we are trying to do. So I think some of us do feel that push to complete extensive material. That is not a requirement. So first things first, we focus on that rapport and connection, build the trust beyond the academics. Of course, don't spend the whole lesson on the rapport building, but use the rapport to develop the relationship and then bring the learner back. Like, oh, sounds fantastic, that soccer game this weekend. You must tell me all about it. But today, let's have a look at these topics and see what we can get through. The adaptability is very important, and a lot of that comes down to how you prepare your materials. If your preparation is rigid and limited, your presentation in the session is probably going to be quite limited. So make sure you've got additional materials there. And positive learning, guys. If the learner is in a positive space, if they feel safe, which is very, very important, and if they feel connected and positive, they're going to grow and learn a lot better there.
When we watch the lessons, we see how you interact with the learner. We want to see you pay attention, read their body language. If they're not interested, if they are disengaging, are you pivoting? I'm saying that word again. Are you pivoting, or are you going to force this down their throat? All right? That's what we're looking for. I have seen some amazing lessons where you have really asked genuine questions on that note. Please don't make it sound, when you do ask the students, get to know them, don't make it sound like you're doing like a checklist. Like, oh, what's your favorite animal? Oh, do you have a pet? Cool. What's your favorite subject? You're not building a connection. You're just asking questions. If they say something, ask a question about that, like, oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that. Or, oh, me too. I did this, really try to engage. And building rapport is not going to happen in one lesson. Okay, it's going to be built over multiple. And that's where Daisy and Shanice said, take notes. Note down what your learner likes, what they don't. Bring that up. Be like, oh yeah, how was this? Or how was that? It really makes that small difference for the learner. It feels like you care, because a lot of AP learners have not had good experiences in school either. And we need to show them that that's not always the case. So we need to be that person for them.
If you do have any questions on AP in general, or specifically the case studies, please feel free to reach out, start a discussion with us, ask questions. We really do want you to have a thorough understanding of where these learners are coming from and ways that you can adapt strategies. There's no one size fits all, but we want you to have an understanding of what you can have in your toolbox for that. And the task is due by the 8th of November.
All right. Well, if you do have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for attending. I'm super, super excited. And thank you, Sam and Shanice and Daisy. I will be sharing everything in the group momentarily. And I hope this was helpful.